Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours. My name is Simon Treen, and I want to ask 1,000 loiners, that's people in Leeds or from Leeds, over this decade, the second question that everybody asks everybody. What do you do? So, if you're in Leeds or from Leeds, then be my guest, Leeds. Email workinghourspod@western-studios.com with a short bio and some ideas about your availability. You can appear as yourself or anonymously on the show, and you will have approval over what gets published from our chat. Welcome to episode 13. That's the third episode of this second volume, 2021, of the Working Hours podcast. My guest today is an anonymous female. We're going girl, boy, until this binary is challenged. This interview was also recorded over Skype. It's a cheat on the year, but this is because me, the producer, feels it's better to have here. You do have the dates for these interviews. I don't have the interviews yet. Okay, so this one was recorded on the 7th of December 2020. It was pre-Christmas, during the winter lockdown, same as the others from this series so far. My guest on this episode is a TV researcher, and as you will soon find out, she's another loiner at large, this time based across the Pennines in Manchester. We discuss a number of topics, including but not limited to hospital work, call centre work, performing, working with children and the media, and more. It's a slightly longer episode, and there's a fair bit of me wittering on, but I have kept it in here for a reason. I will say more about that next time. Obviously, we do spend a fair amount of time on working in TV, but this chat goes all over the place again, which is good, I think. Don't know about you, but if that's your kind of thing, you're in the right place. Just before we get into this episode, another quick shout out for guests. I need you to be guest leads. I really need to get representation from every role, every level of pay scale, but I especially need to hear from BAME workers, LGBT plus workers, and any workers with disabilities that are either in Leeds or from Leeds. I want every sort of loiner, so even if you're a loiner who can't and doesn't work, I would still be very interested to hear what you think about work. Okay, that's the intro done. Let's get into this. Right, so I'll start off with the question that I start off with everyone. So what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I don't actually remember. I don't think I specifically ever had a career in mind when I was younger. Not that I know of. The only interesting thing that my mum told me was she sent a letter to her parents in Israel. And this was when I was really young, I think. I don't know if I was 3 or 4. And she sent a letter to her parents going, I think she's going to be a great singer when she's older. But weirdly, I didn't start singing till I was about 17 or 18. So she predicted my future slightly. But yeah, I don't ever really remember having a specific career in mind, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you didn't dream of being a nurse or anything when you were little, or that's what I'm going to do?
No, not really. I suppose just trying to think. I had quite a vivid imagination, so I had visible friends and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe creativity was always going to be something. Yeah. But yeah, I never really had a specific desire to do one certain thing.
So has that made it more difficult, kind of, now that you're working? Has it made it more difficult of I'll try some of this, I'll try some of that? What's been the result?
If you look at I suppose the span of my career, it's definitely not a straight line. I've done so many different jobs, tried so many different jobs. So maybe that's part and parcel of it, actually, because I didn't have a specific desire when I was younger. I suppose you just have to try and find your way and see what suits you and what doesn't. But it's been it still continues. To be honest, it's weird. As a child, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and even now, I'm kind of, especially during these times, I'm kind of debating whether the career I'm currently in is the right career for me. So I am a bit of a, how do I put it, I don't always stick to kind of one thing. I quite like trying different things out, really. So what are you doing now? So I'm a TV researcher, freelance TV researcher, and So I've been doing that for about 3 years. So yeah, so still very new, and
Okay.
it's very freelance,
Yeah.
which is what I've been getting used to, and especially at the moment with COVID times, it has been even more tricky than usual, I would say. I think any creative industry, it's had quite a impact on the industries. So, but I've been quite lucky in general, kind of during this year, I would
Hmm.
say. But yeah, it's still it's an interesting career role because you are doing something different every time.
Yeah.
Really.
I was going to say, I bet it gives you a lot of variety because you're
Yeah,
working on a different program, so you're looking at different things.
yeah. I think that's what I love about it is you're in some ways you're just stepping into the unknown completely because I work generally in like factual, and I have done some kids TV as well, which I really like, but generally like factual entertainment or documentaries is which I want to kind of get into more. And I suppose, yeah, with that you're stepping into the unknown. Sometimes you don't even know what the program is you're applying for.
Right.
Every time you apply for a job, it's a different team, you're working with a different team, so then there's a whole different team dynamic that you've got to
Yeah.
adapt to. The very short contracts generally, so kind of 3 or 4 months. Some
Hmm.
are even less, some could be like 3 weeks, so you're having to suddenly work with people you haven't worked with before, put out programs in a fast turnaround time, all in a kind of quite short space of time. It has its challenges, but I think what I love most about it is I love people. I love speaking to people. I love kind of even what you're doing. It's interesting how you're chatting to so many different people who do different things, and how much variety there is in that, and the
Hmm.
kind of people you meet and the different experiences. And so yeah, I think that's what I enjoy the most, is kind of discovering new things or meeting new people and listening to their stories, or
Yeah.
finding out their stories. But it is challenging, especially as early on in your career there's a lot of, I would say, obstacles to kind of overcome. Lots of rejection, lots
Right.
of
Yeah.
people not kind of emailing back if you've applied for a job, and you're just waiting there, and then kind of you just have to forget about it.
If you give kind of an outline of what your work involves, I mean, I think from the outside, it's very easy to think of researchers as, people stuck in a room looking through
Yeah,
books and all the internet and
yeah,
fact
yeah.
checking in a kind
Um,
of what's it? What's that show with the elves? The one that Stephen Fry used to do, QI.
oh yeah,
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 the QI elves, that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of the idea that a lot of people have. But from what you've described it, like, well, bits of what you've described, it kind of sounds a bit more office based and phone calls and so on. So what's kind of the mix, and how much is
there's so much variety actually. Funnily enough, I didn't realize, well, one, going into this industry, I didn't realize how freelance it was. Before I kind of got into TV, I did a master's at Salford Uni in media production, children's TV production. So it was like a year-long master's. First time I picked up a camera, I haven't done TV stuff before, like had no previous experience apart from logging, which is where you kind of type what people are saying. And kind of I did that thinking, oh, it's going to be a stable career now, go into media, and actually it's more freelance than I realized,
Mhm.
really. So for the last role I had, I was a casting researcher.
Yeah.
So there are specific roles. So there's shooting researcher, casting researcher. There's also an archive researcher. I think you can have quiz researchers as well, and then some programs have a general researcher. So on the last program, I was a casting researcher, which entailed finding couples or family members or I suppose friends, but that was a lot rarer, who were renovating derelict properties abroad.
Okay.
So it can be quite specific. That one was very specific.
So how would you go about that? Would will you just sort of advertise? You go to specific places, advertise, and say, "Are you one of these? Can you get in touch?" Or you kind
it's
of
kind
look for people, or
yeah, it's a variety of stuff. So we have posters which the company then puts out, kind of going, do you know someone who
yeah,
is currently renovating derelict properties? And this is all during COVID actually as well. So kind of going into it, I did think it might be a bit more of a challenge to find people, but
mm,
I was very surprised that actually people take on these mammoth projects. But anyway, kind of back to the casting. So we have posters which we put out. Then I looked at, because there were certain countries, Spain, France, and Mallorca we were looking at. So then I would Facebook groups, obviously social media is a big one, searching for people, seeing if they've got derelict pictures that they're currently undertaking, and then ringing up estate agents in Spain, opening with a bit of bad Spanish or French. But actually, a lot of people, there were a lot of kind of English run estate agencies abroad. Again,
yeah,
some
yeah.
I didn't know before, but
Mhm.
now I know. So kind of contacting them, contacting project managers who might know someone, and yeah, just generally speaking to people who might be able to help, then pass on my information to someone else.
And then you have to lock down the guests. So did you have a kind of like target for how many people? Is it like you need a person for each episode, and it's a 6 episode show, or is it like you have a few per episode, or?
Yeah, so it's all stipulated by, so there's the channel, and then obviously kind of higher up the series producer, and producer also make decisions as to which couples to go with. I think the difficulty with this one, generally there's a general demographic of people who are renovating derelict properties,
Mhm.
which is kind of white older people, going out there. We did get a kind of mix of some young people taking up the challenge, and generally kind of trying to have some variety in terms of the personalities, but
Yeah,
also they need to be interesting
yeah. Someone
way
that's got a bit
with
of
their story
personality as well,
needs to
and
be
yeah,
interesting. Yeah. So yeah, for me, I was just kind of ringing up and kind of casting people and having like an initial, kind of what we're doing now, like a phone chat where you find out a bit more about them, and what are they up to, and getting an insight of where they are in their derelict journey, because it was about the journey, so showing someone at the
yeah.
beginning and then seeing their dream home at the end, kind of thing. I'm hoping, well, it should be all right, me discussing the ins, because now I've done it, it should be fine. But that's the other
Well,
thing.
we haven't mentioned the show, so that's fine.
No, that's true, you'll never know. um,
I mean, how's furlough been then? Have you like what have you been doing with yourself? Have
what,
you been just twiddling your thumbs, or are you like
um,
you trying to find other things to be involved in? What's it meant to you, really?
well, to be honest, I was very lucky with the furlough, because I finished my contract about a couple of months ago, and so I didn't think I could get furloughed. So I was about to go on universal credit, because I was like, I'd managed to save a bit.
Yeah, but you need some income.
Yeah, but I kind of need to start thinking about it. But I think the only problem was that is you have to apply for any job. So, and I was a bit like, obviously I'm still applying for TV kind of role.
Yeah,
So I was wondering, is that going to be like a distraction? But anyway, so the production company I worked for got in touch and basically said they can furlough me.
yeah,
And so I've been doing a lot of there's a thing called Screen Skills, which is like a
Mhm.
TV and film industry kind of. I don't know if they're technically a charity. I think
There
they might.
used to be a sector skills organisation. I know this from my days at Union Learn when they had all these like special. So each sector had a various like a training body that
Yeah.
and I think they were using them to kind of like for developing MVQs and stuff. It was very much from the the previous Labour government.
Okay.
And yeah, Screen Skills is the sort of TV and film one. So
Yeah.
it sets like the standards for, well, it tries to set standards for kind of job descriptions and what to expect and kind of like what sort of training should be and what you need.
Yeah.
Actually, I know someone there.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
they've been a godsend in some ways because I've
they
been.
are pretty good from what I've seen of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've put on a lot of like online discussions about things. I think for me, it's just I'm constantly trying to, I suppose, kind of add skills to my CV. So looking at ways I can make myself more
Indispensable.
not indispensable. What's the word? More
Marketable.
where they're gonna go, "Well, I'm gonna pick her because she's got some extra skills."
Gonna pick who? Sorry. Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. So your employer
A
potentially is like,
bit more
This,
desirable,
yeah, this girl's,
maybe.
she's got it all. We need to get this girl. That kind of thing.
Yeah, because one thing I want to go into kind of documentaries, but
Mm,
my issue is that I don't have enough camera skills, and generally in documentaries you need to be able to shoot on camera, but because I
mm,
don't have the confidence really, like I've filmed a documentary during my masters, so it's not like I can't do it, but because I don't have a specific credit going shooting researcher, you know
mm,
then people won't take me on as a shooting researcher because there's just a risk of taking someone on who might film quite shoddily. So
mm,
I think that's the barriers in terms of the industry. There needs to be a lot more training, and I think now you kind of go into a job and there's this list of things you must be able to do. This you must be able to do this, you must be able to do this, you must be able to use a camera, and it's a long list, and I'm like, how am I supposed to be able to know all that stuff
mm.
without someone giving me that experience in the first place? So it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot about proving to people that you can do it. And then also for me, I moved back north in February this year, which was a godsend. I'm so glad I moved back north. But alas, it was, it's made it a bit more difficult in terms of understanding the TV world
Mm,
back in the north.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's like you have to learn a whole new landscape and sort of
yeah,
the new names, new people, new companies.
yeah, new networks. It's all about the networking. And yeah, just even because TV has been very London centric, and there are more kind of programs now back north. I still think there could be even more, which hopefully it's kind of looking that way. But yeah, but like how quiet is it usually? How many programs are there running in the north generally, which has been quite hard to ascertain. But yeah,
What's the sort of content that's made then at the moment? Content. The sort of programs that they make at the moment, is it genuinely like factual news, current affairs, or is there quite a lot of drama and children's and
oh, in the north or
Mhm. Yeah,
um
yeah. So
yeah,
you're in Manchester, aren't you? We just
yeah,
say for the viewers, not viewers, listeners, but yeah. So you're another lawyer working outside of Leeds.
yes, indeed. So in terms of, well, there's a variety really. I think there's slightly less drama,
Hmm.
maybe, there's children's TV in Media City. That's all down there, down here, up here. I never know which direction. It's my pet hate of my dad's. I'm like, I'm just going down. What is it? Down to Leeds, and he's like, no, it's up to Leeds.
But it's kind of wrong both ways, isn't it, really? Because, you know, if you think about the globe, it's arbitrary that we've put it that way up and north at the top. So,
Yeah, I'm just like, it depends on which direction you're facing. But yeah, so there is a variety. There's lots factual, there's fact-ent as well. You know, things like Educating Yorkshire, there's Gogglebox, First Dates.
First Date's produced up here.
Well, it's not produced up here, but actually, yeah, I think the new First Dates.
Okay.
In a Manchester restaurant, which I managed to work on during lockdown, which was very. I loved that. Absolutely great. Well, so yeah, there is a variety of stuff. It's just obviously there's less people going for the same roles, maybe. Yeah.
Well, so you're saying there's less people applying now because I suppose more people are kind of working from home or worried about going out into the workforce, so there are less applications? Or
no, at the moment I would say I think there's more because
people have got more time.
There's more people currently not in jobs. So I don't know. To be honest, it could be normal, the amount of applications, but I think because of the current circumstances, more people searching for jobs. And luckily this time around, productions are still running. Like, even if you watch Strictly Come Dancing, I think it's amazing how they've managed to kind of continue to do it. And I think that's the thing about TV and creative things, is that people don't realise how amazing and pinnacle it is in terms of how much content you take in from it and how much it gives to people, and it's escapism, or you can see someone who maybe looks like you or has a similar background to you, or alternatively someone from different part of the country, and understanding their perspective. I think in terms of TV, it just shows you the variety and amazingness of everyone around you, and all the different kind of lives that people have kind of lived, all from sitting on your couch.
Yeah, TV is a very interesting one. I've got a strange relationship with TV. I used to be like obsessively watching the TV when I was a kid, and then I went up to Northumberland and did the TV production course there, which is one of the best ones. Well, at the time was one of the best ones in the country, and it just wasn't for me because I was more of a film person. But the one thing that it did in terms of TV was it just made me realize how lazy a lot of it is. And like the thing that I came away from that, this is me talking in a sort of, I want exciting camera work and stuff going all over the place. So when I came back, I sort of realized that the best things in terms of TV, camera work and the crew and the craft of it is the sport. Like, you can't get, like, the way that they, especially now, the way that they can fly the cameras all over the place, the vision mixing, like, that's really sort of top of the game technically, I think. That's still a personal opinion.
Yeah.
TV itself, it's still got a bit of stigma as being kind of like a working class medium. It's like for the public, for the great unwashed masses of like people watching TV. But then you've had this kind of renaissance of TV with all these like, must-watch TV programs and stuff, and with bigger screens and, the development of the technology. So it is a wonderful thing. Like you mentioned Gogglebox earlier.
Yeah.
And I really like Gogglebox. And what I find interesting is because I'd done that TV module, like I'd done some TV study in my course, in my degree. I was like, the domestic side of TV and the politics of who, how the household consumes TV and the politics of the remote control and like just people sat watching. I think it's just a really interesting kind of ethnological document, really. And I know that it's made to be more exciting for TV, but it's still an interesting thing. I think
Mm.
it's a very interesting thing to watch, and watching how people watch TV. Um, this is a bit of a tangent, but
And also what's great about Gogglebox, I would say, I think it's the simplicity of it as well.
mm,
Because I think sometimes when an idea is too complicated, like if there's no story there, if there's no characters involved in the program, a lot of people kind of switch off because they're what's kind of even in everything, like the story is the most important thing. But with Gogglebox, it's so simple, but you get so many stories out of it, and dynamics between
mm,
brother and sister, mum and dad, friends, and it's just so relatable as well.
mhm.
Everyone can relate to sitting down and watching. I watched the Cube one, and it was interesting seeing how they react to the same people that I'd watched on the Cube getting annoyed with them because he was really rude, and how they reacted, and their response to it. I'm just fascinated generally with, I suppose, humans.
Okay, so I want to cover some of your previous jobs, but I also want to, before I go into that, uh, what is stopping you from shooting your documentary then? Is it just like your sense of competency with the camera, or have you not
uh,
do you not have a subject? Is it,
well, one, I don't have a camera.
yeah?
so, so, and especially during these times, you could film on a phone. Someone could say, well, nowadays it's there on your phone. But I think for me, and maybe I've made it bigger in my head, but for me, I want to make content like Simon Reeve or Louis Theroux, and a part of me does want to do that interview, like presenter type thing, where I'm interviewing them on screen, or Stacey Dooley even. So and I don't want to be like a YouTube vlogger,
Mhm.
which is kind of, I don't know, with your phone it could come across a bit less professional. Yeah, so I could go out, I suppose, but then there's so many dynamics where I can't do it all on my own.
Mhm.
I'll need someone with me to help. Then there's also
You'll need a researcher.
yeah. um and then what else? Yeah, you need permissions, obviously, making sure you get the right people. You need the story in the first place, and finding the right people. But I did make a documentary during my masters, so but
And all of that stuff is stuff that you do for other people when you're getting paid for it. I think
yeah,
I don't know if you agree with this, but I think it's much harder to do something when it's for yourself,
yeah,
because, and especially when you know you won't get paid for that as well. It's like, well, I can do this thing, but everybody in the world is doing a thing now. Like, what incentivizes me to actually go and make that effort? Because you know what it would entail, you know how much
yeah.
work it would be.
I think for me, it's more I'm my own worst enemy in terms of self-critic, a bit of a perfectionist. I'm not gonna lie,
It's not
and
good
so
enough. Not good enough.
yeah, not good enough. And that actually, that's a big thing in TV. I did a screen skills session recently on public speaking, but also that idea of imposter syndrome. There's a lot of that going on because in TV, like I said, there's this long list of things you need to be able to do. You have to go into that job going, yep, I'm on it. I can't fail. I've got to be on top of my game. If I fail at this job, then word spreads.
Yeah.
So if they think I'm lazy and incompetent, or I've done something drastically wrong, like maybe didn't press record on the camera, then that reputation kind
Precedes
of
you.
follows you.
Yeah.
But then obviously I've made that up in my head, because generally all the programs so far I've worked on, I've got very kind of good feedback. So there's no evidence that would happen, but that's always, I suppose, in the back of your head, the self-doubt creeping in. So, but where was I? In terms of, kind of going out and shooting myself. Yeah, and the thing is, with my masters, the uni could provide the cameras, the equipment. Obviously, I had to create. I basically came up with the idea. So my documentary was looking at the power of music on children, and it was half an hour, and I had 2 to 3 months to make it, which is not that long. Ended up doing like 25 plus more interviews. It was a crazy time. Some might say I bit off more than I could chew, but I like a challenge.
Yeah, but you made it, so you didn't.
Yeah.
You got it finished. So
Yeah, exactly. I achieved it. So yeah, from that, so I came up with the idea, had to find the contributors, had to find the organisations to get involved, had to find. I did some filming myself, including in a hospital, but I had to have a friend help on sound, or I had other cameramen to get involved to kind of film the larger groups of kids that I was kind of filming with. So really, you need a team of people in some ways, and have thought about setting up my own production company, kind of going full self-employed. But the business side, the finance side, I don't have a clue at all.
so
And you're never taught that. So
yeah.
really,
Well, yeah, this is the key thing with it, like even with my course when we were doing, there was a lot of stuff about the internet, and there was one particular module, I can't remember who the lecturer was, but talking about setting up online and stuff, and every time he was like, how are you going to make money out of it? How are you going to make money out of it? And this was before all of just advertising and before Patreon and all these things.
yeah.
But it was like, that's all well and good, but it's going to cost you money to run that. So how are you going to make money out of it? How is it going to pay for itself? I think that's the hard thing to do. But they should be teaching you that. Like, if we supposedly live in a capitalist economy, then we should know how to be capitalists, surely. Like, how do you run this business, and how, you get a sense of it and you pick things up from other people. But I bet a lot of these, that statistic of like, most businesses failing within the first year. And I think a lot of that is just getting your head around running a business. It's completely different to being part of a business, because there's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of things to cover, and you should have some background in that. I think we all should.
Or even from a young age, I think like primary school kids should be taught, well, maybe primary is a bit too young, maybe secondary school, about tax, about mortgages, about like
interest rates and APR.
Yeah, or just kind of, how do you budget? There's never any. I don't. To be honest, I'm still terrible at budgeting, and especially in a freelance world, you've got to be a lot more on it, really. And then I think also with my industry, it's a bit more complex because there's different types of freelance. So I'm freelance, but I'm not self-employed because I'm still on like PAYE. So I'm on kind of short contracts. But then as you step up, you then are self-employed. So you have to start doing
your own
taxes.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm literally dreading that day, because like literally I've never had to deal with that my whole entire life. So I've never been taught it. So
what is your go-to? Is it going to be like straight to family and ask for advice, or is it hiring an accountant? Would you be able to afford an accountant? Like which would be your route, or would you try and just find out yourself of how
I think
to do
work it out for yourself.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to just work it out and take the plunge. To be honest, I've taken a lot of risks, I would say, in my careers and life. And at the time, it feels like, what am I doing? Oh
Mm.
my God. But actually, those risks, and even kind of on some of the jobs where I've really felt like I'm no good at this, I can't do this. Yeah, even during the documentary I made, I'm like, what am I doing? I can't do this. But actually, I think the challenges are where you learn the most, and in some ways, failure, you learn the most. I think you're taught that failure is a bad thing,
Mm.
like during primary and secondary school, like in general, you have to know what you're doing from a young age. You've got to succeed, succeed, succeed.
Yeah.
Actually, what is success? Like, that's the thing. I've been like, what is success?
Hmm.
What is a good career?
Mm.
Actually, it's very individualistic, I would say. But it's interesting. There's a lot of perceptions on what job you do.
Mm.
Like, it's interesting when I tell people I work in TV compared to some of my other jobs I used to have, the different perceptions
Hmm.
that people had with that title of a job.
Hmm.
It was yeah, it's very interesting how people can judge you just on your job title, or think they know. People think TV's glamorous.
Hmm.
It ain't glamorous in any sense. It's in some aspects of it as kind of a glorified office worker, you know.
Well, the show is, I mean, it's the same with like with theatre productions.
Mm,
You have like so if you think of a typical sort of proscenium arch, and you've got the lights on, you've got the music,
mm,
and while that's on, that's magic, like that's the magic of theatre. But
mm.
behind it is, there's a guy sat in a control room messing around with levers. There's loads of actors running around half naked backstage,
Yeah,
changing into costumes and out of them, and it's utter chaos.
yeah,
Nothing glamorous about that, but the magic happens in the lighting and the music. It's the
mm,
same with TV. As you're making the program, it's a lot of people stood around in the rain and mud and the cold in big
mm.
coats, going, "Ooh, this is a pain, isn't it?" And then the end result is like, "Wow, look at this thing that's on for half an hour." That was mildly diverting. So
Yeah,
you kind of that. I think that's why people see it as glamorous, because you don't think of all the people stood around for ages asking people not to walk through shot and
yeah,
can you go around here, please? No, I always come through here. Like, hours of looking through books to try and find certain facts. Um, but the end result is glamorous, I think.
yeah. That's true. Although, interestingly, I remembered, because I also do singing and playing guitar on the side. And I remember going to a gig once.
You play guitar on its side?
Oh,
Sorry.
it's fine. I do love a. Well, I was going to say a
Dad joke.
crap joke.
Yeah.
I did. That's one thing I was going to ask is like, can you swear on this? But
Yeah.
I suppose you can. Not that
Yeah, I mean, so it's up
please.
to you. I could always cut it out later. Is the thing, like if you badmouth everyone and then go, oh, hang on, I probably shouldn't have out in the world.
Uh, but I remember some guy coming up to me and going, "Ooh, you must get paid a lot to be a musician." And I was just like looking at him like, "What? Like, who are you?" But the thing is, for people who are not involved in music, they see the pop stars, they
Mm.
see the glam, they see, Beyonce on stage with, all the kind of backing dancers and stuff, and think, oh, all singers must, be raking it in. But actually, there's hundreds and thousands of people, just going to tiny open mics and trying to make a living out of it, and really, really struggling.
Mm.
Um, and people don't see that, or kind of even, yeah, I suppose starting out, it's how do you build a fan base and get people to go to local gigs where they don't know anyone and
Mm.
invest in people they don't know, rather than now, I think, people are like, oh, I'll only like him because so and
Mm.
so likes him. You know, there's that kind of collective thinking of taking a risk on people you
Mhm.
might know about. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. I mean, it's basically, it's like trying to build a customer base, isn't it? Essentially, of
Yeah.
like, well, you build a fan base in music terms, but you're trying to build a following. You're trying to
Mm.
create work that people like, that they'll come back to, and they'll bring other people to.
And
And I
and
think,
and also, I think actually it's one thing in TV and maybe in other industries, but actually taking a risk on someone who hasn't got all the box ticked, you know,
mm,
all those boxes ticked, because actually someone could have the perfect degree,
mm.
but actually they might not be that enthusiastic,
Well,
you
they
know.
might have no life experience whatsoever. They might be
Yeah, they
very
could have
sheltered and
no
they've gone
life
straight to
experience.
university and
Yeah,
got a good degree and didn't even like, stray while they're at uni. I mean, there are plenty of people who go to university and are very, very straight laced, aren't there? So,
mm. Whereas there could be someone else who actually they might not have, you know, the ideal skills, but there's other elements of their personality or skill sets from other things that actually would make them a lot better. So having companies take a risk on that rather than a safe, oh, I've worked with him before, you know, I better use him again. It's
yeah,
actually taking risks on people and
bringing in
say,
new blood, rather than
yeah,
just, the same people all the time. And it's like, well, you're going to have the same ideas. If you want to do something new, you have to change something.
yeah. I think that's what's maybe slightly changed. I could be wrong, but I was reading Simon Reeve's book, and he was like a postie in I think it was a newspaper like journalism company. And because he was enthusiastic, he did a few side jobs and then ended up being a researcher. And then from that, I think the producer guy really took a shining to him and
Mm.
took a chance on him, and he ended up doing all these amazing bonkers things. And I don't think health and safety was probably the same back then as
Mm.
it was now. I think there needs to be more champions involved in actually championing people coming up. That's what I'd kind of like to be in some
Mm.
way, a champion for helping people see the potential that they have and, you know, somehow giving them opportunities.
Do you think you see quite a lot of that in the industry still? I mean, like when I was younger and I was all sort of TV and film obsessed, you always got the impression that there was lots of opportunity to advance quite quickly if you're in the, if you were doing the right things and you were in the right places
Mhm.
and the right people liked you. Do you think there's and a lot of the people, like when I did work on sort of odd shoots here and there, a lot of the industry people were generally like really good, really sort of eager
Mm.
to help you and sort of say, oh, you've been really good and like, I can recommend you on something else, or if I get a job here, sometimes it's just people saying things. But is there still quite a lot of that? Are people quite willing to kind of help, or is it more a sense of kind of protecting your own territory now of like, well,
Mm,
I don't want to bring new people in because that's going to be a threat to my job and my work.
yeah, I think it's a mix. I so During my masters, I got onto a scheme called the Network, which is like a 4-day TV industry thing, and
Sounds like a thriller film.
the Network. Um, and actually, if it wasn't for them, I would be more probably screwed than I am. So basically, you get a 4-day TV industry insight, and then they put you onto a get into work scheme.
Mhm.
And from that, I managed to get an internship, a paid internship, but it was in London. So I was in Manchester at the time, and I only could have done that because it was paid.
Mhm.
You know, it was a paid internship. If it wasn't paid,
Mhm.
someone else would have got it who can afford, you know,
To not
London
get paid,
rent
yeah.
for however long. So it was a 6-month internship, and that was amazing because I got to work on different kind of a development for half a day, or went and ran on a show, like I ran on Crystal Maze, which was amazing. And I did a camera kind of course during there, but I think the hardship comes when you're out of that, when I went into freelancing. So I went out of that bubble of that production company and vending for myself. And I do think actually coming back north, there's more of a sense of community here, and people actually willing to help you a bit more here than in London. I think it's a bit more.
It's a bit more familial, whereas London's a bit more strangers.
Yeah, I think it's harder to create a community in London because it's so big.
And so many people like just churn through the city.
Yeah, or if you don't want that job, say and have do it. But I just still think there needs to be more kind of getting camera experience, and like how am I going to get camera experience without someone taking a risk on me going out and shooting something for the show? It's kind of that kind of thing of, obviously they still need to make a program. Obviously, you still have to do the job that you were, asked to do. But it's those little things of, giving someone the chance to do it.
Okay, let's talk about some previous jobs then. So before you were doing this,
how long have you got?
Oh yeah, I've got as long as you want. So
You might be here all day.
Well, I mean, I'm quite happy to keep going.
Oh yeah, I can.
So if you get tired or bored or anything, just let me know. Yeah. So what was your first job?
My first job was when I was 11. Worked in my brother's newsagent.
Yeah.
And was also a paper girl. Although, albeit, well, I think it was probably more because I was a girl more than anything. But my dad did help drive some of the way to deliver the papers, so I did have a helping hand. So yeah, I did that when I was 11. So I suppose that's quite young in terms of starting off having a job. But it's like
you pocket money, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah. It's just like weekend stuff. I had to hide in the back whenever someone came in to, take top shelf magazines when they existed. But yeah, so I started off doing that, and then, so what did I do from there? Then did I help with my? So then my oldest brother's an estate. Did you
stay in school, or you?
Yeah, so I did school, then I went to college, and then I went to uni, and my undergrad was in drama. And that was in London. That was my first experience of leaving home in a very large city, very expensive city. So yes, I went over to London, did a drama degree, which, alas, didn't get me very far.
Did you enjoy the course? Did you find the course valuable?
I think in hindsight, I would have done something different. It was kind of, it wasn't like an acting degree, and I think for me it was more the performance side that I was interested in, whereas this was like half, some theory, some practical, but then there was a lot of kind of performance art stuff, so a bit more avant-garde, a bit niche, I would say. There was some kind of like, what was it, making Shakespeare or something, where we combined different Shakespeares together and made a performance out of it. But then I also did kind of interventions, or had to do a performance on a body part. So did it on lips, and then wrote a comedy song about PDA, which is still on the ethers of YouTube somewhere. So yeah, I did that, and then I stayed in London for an extra year and danced in the opening ceremony of the Olympics.
Cool.
Which was a great experience. And so yeah, during that time, I was working at the university shop, That was it, as a supervisor. And I kind of stayed there a bit after I'd finished my third year. And then I got a lot of kind of event stuff. Like it was kind of what's it called? You know, the agencies where you can apply for like admin jobs or event
Oh,
jobs.
like temp agency.
Kind of, yeah, temp agencies, that's it. So yeah, I did kind of some of that. Yeah, because I think I decided to leave the university shop because got to the
Just didn't
point where I was
want to-
like, yeah, I don't want to sell you sandwiches anymore. Especially when the campus was like dead as well. There's like no one around, so you're just standing around doing nothing for ages. So yeah, I did random stuff like events at London Zoo. I also did Cadbury's World, like an event that popped up. But then I got to the point where I had to move back home, basically. Made the decision of moving back home to Leeds. And that was quite hard, I would say.
Why would you say it was hard? Did you feel like, was it sort of, did you feel like a failure kind of coming back?
Yeah.
Kind of
And
like, oh, I should have stayed there
And I suppose it was that thing where I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like,
Yeah.
What do I want to do? Who am I?
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot of stigma, and it still annoys me to this day. Say if you are living with your parents, like, so what? Who cares? But there is that stigma of, oh, you've moved back with your parents. I don't know. There's just like a.
Well, I see it as a benefit. I mean, if I drop dead here, at least they'll find me,
Yeah.
If I was
Yeah.
in London still in a flat on my own, I could be there for 3 years before someone discovered me.
Oh, well, to be honest, I had a story where I lived with someone, and he had the Wi-Fi in his bedroom. So obviously, if anything went wrong with the Wi-Fi, we'd have to go to his bedroom to kind of sort it out. But anyway, I hadn't seen him for ages, and like one day, he came in, and I was like, "Oh, hello, hey James, how are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I've just been in hospital for 2 weeks." And we were like, "What?" Didn't even know. Oh, it freaked me out. And then I was like, he could have died in his bedroom, and
Yeah.
we would have known. And that actually horrified me. I think yeah, I think that's the thing in London. Sometimes I felt very lonely in London. I think it got to the point where I don't know. It's a very hard city to live in if you don't have a lot of money, basically.
Yeah. Well, and also you really got to push yourself out there in London, don't you? Like no one's gonna come and give you anything in London. You have to, like, it's all there, but you have to go and get it.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, I moved back home, and then I think I helped at my brother's pub for some of it, and then again did like temping jobs. I then worked in a hospital as a ward clerk for, I think that was about 6 months.
That's a random turn, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
how did you get into
Do you know
that?
what? I think everyone in their career should work at a hospital just to understand how amazing, the NHS and how hospitals run, and just the network of people that are involved, and just every aspect of it. I think everyone should work in a hospital.
Very good. Very interesting. I will emphasize for the listener that you were banging your finger on the table. I am very firm on this point.
I forgot. Yeah, the subtlety of sound. Because I worked on, it was like a haematology ward, across 2 haematology wards, and then I also worked a bit on the young adults ward as well, and then helped on thoracic as well. And it was just kind of getting case notes and just admin kind of stuff and reception work and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it was an amazing experience to have, actually. And then I also worked at Asda customer complaints.
Ooh, in Leeds.
Yes.
The headquarters. How was that?
Oh,
Were
well,
you were you front line?
say that again.
So were you the front line of complaint? Were
Yeah,
you
so
in front
people
of
would
the
ring
TV?
up and complain about the salty crisps not being salty enough, or I did have a 3 hour conversation with one guy about he'd put his pin in wrong, but then was annoyed how they dealt with it. But the joys. And it was quite funny with that because right at the beginning we have like a little coach trainer who listens to your conversation, and he was like, "Oh, can we use your opening line as a way of an example of how you should sound, positive and happy
Mm.
introduction on the phone?" Yeah. And then it got like 2 months down the line. And he listened, he's like, "Where's that spark gone?" Sure.
Being snuffed out.
Yeah. And I think I did that for 3 months. I couldn't. And there was someone there who they need. To be honest, anyone who stays there for a long time, they need a medal. There was someone who'd been working there for like 15 years, and she loved it. Like that's the thing. She loved it. She kind of really enjoyed it.
Mm.
I was just like, you need a medal. Like, yeah, just so they had some funny ones, but
Well, you're hearing negativity all day.
yeah,
It's like, yeah,
and some of it's just so first world problems.
yeah. It's such a nothing. Like someone
Yeah,
complaining about nothing that you have to take seriously.
yeah,
When you feel like it's just going, look around you.
yeah, and
You're
then
worried
also
about this.
what when there was an issue, it was really difficult for me because sometimes I'd have to pass it on. I
Mm.
couldn't solve the problem myself. I'd have to pass it on, and then sometimes that problem wasn't solved, and so I found it quite frustrating that I couldn't actually
Yeah, resolve everything.
resolve the issues sometimes. And so yeah, I did that, and again I kind of did some temporary work where I'd worked as a receptionist at Land Rovers, worked in a tax company. I told you you'd be here forever, going through my job
Yeah,
list.
my CV is similar, like all sorts of random sort of temporary
Yeah.
roles.
And then I worked at a storytelling children's centre, and
Which
I,
sounds interesting and exciting, was it?
the job itself, yes, and without naming names, the management needed, you know.
A slap?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
Then
think the thing is with some companies, and it does perplex me, is when they don't listen to staff. And if there is an issue, or if people are voicing that there's a problem,
Mhm.
and you could take that as someone being negative about their company, but actually, you should take on criticism and look at it and go, okay, a lot of staff are unhappy. How can we resolve this?
Mm.
Don't continue to do things that are making staff unhappy, because actually it's just the thing, like people are
I
not going
don't.
to
Well,
stay. People are not
yeah.
going to stay, and actually I think that when
Or
there's a
give a good
positive in.
performance either. Or give a
Yeah,
good performance in the work either.
yeah, I put a lot into it. But because that's kind of the way I am, I kind of got exhausted from it really, and then I got to the point where I ended up quitting basically, and it was kind of a pinnacle point because I'd seen this masters at Salford Uni, and so I applied for that because I'd worked with kids, so I thought, I understand kids, I'd like to kind of go into something that involves, I don't know, inspiring kids, or creating content that they can watch. And so I thought the kids TV production course was up my street basically. So I'd applied for that. I didn't know whether I'd got it yet, and then quit my job, and then my band split up. So I was like, right. And then I managed to get the masters, so I was like, right, that's it, I'm going to Manchester now. and took a risk,
Yeah.
and took out, a second student loan, postgrad loan, and then moved to back to London to do my internship, and then moved back to Manchester at the start of this year. So yeah, I've kind of dotted all around the place, really. But yeah, I should have really I should have prepped myself for this conversation and got my CV out to remind me.
But I still like these being quite free form, but I think as I go through, I will put more of a formula into them.
Yeah.
But I like that at the moment I'm kind of still finding my feet for the show as well, of like what I want it to be. So I was listening to one recently that I was editing, and I was like, I need to put more effort into the curation of these. Like, I need to treat them with a bit more value. Like, I've not really done much on introductions, because I don't want, when I've listened to other podcasts, especially interview podcasts, I'm kind of like, I'm here to listen to the interview. I don't want 10 minutes of the host like rabbiting on about whatever. But I think as well that it's useful to kind of prep what you're talking about, what you cover, and that kind of thing, and also just kind of put the thing into a bit more perspective. So I think I'll do that later down the line. But at the moment, I nearly poked myself in the eye. At the moment, I think keeping it fairly free form.
Yeah.
And because the fact that you don't prepare lets people kind of go off on these tangents.
And that's where you find the gems,
the
gold. Yeah, I think that's why I like documentaries, because you can never prepare.
You go where the story goes.
What you're gonna record or find, and so when I did the filming in the hospital, and basically it was musicians who went into Manchester Children's Hospital and played to kind of children on the ward, and just Tommy, he was one of the kids involved. He was deaf, and he had like a tracheotomy attached to his throat, and he's only like 1 or 2. And I captured this moment where he sat on the bed, and Mark's playing the guitar, and he puts his little hands through the bed bars and just puts his fingers on the guitar strings and feels the vibrations, and then he just has this amazing smile on his face. And it's just having that moment where it's like, wow, the impact that music has had on him, and just in that moment has taken away everything else that's kind of going on with him away. He's kind of just enjoying the music and the feeling that it gives him. And I wouldn't have ever seen that if I hadn't decided to go in and film in the hospital. So so that's what I love about.
And nor could you have planned the moment. I mean, you could have in a way, but the fact that you don't plan it makes it actually genuinely moving.
Yeah, but I didn't even know him before I went into the hospital. I think he happened to be there that day, I think. But I think that's one thing I kind of thought about, maybe chatting in terms of job type of stuff, is that perception when you're really young that you should know what you're doing, and actually your career, you should by the time you're 18 you should be successful. Or I don't know, even with social media now, you can compare yourself all the time to, that person's done this by this age, and that person's done that by that age, and how's that person managed to do that? But actually that was another interesting aspect of going into TV, is that I went in late. So I started TV when I was 27, whereas there was kind of a lot younger people coming in, when they're 21 or kind of even younger. And one thing I did find was that people who came straight out of uni and then did a master's maybe, or just came straight out of uni, I don't think often they could see the opportunities they could be taking, because they haven't experienced life yet.
they haven't experienced the lack of opportunity that's there in reality.
Yeah, they haven't.
So
Yeah,
they turn down good things that was like, you should have really got on that.
or they haven't experienced reality, I suppose. They just, I think sometimes, they just feel like things are going to come to them things are going to come to you on a plate, and
Yeah,
actually you have to work, frigging hard
you have to
to,
work to get things on your plate.
yeah. Or, I think I would say I say yes to a lot of things just because, yeah, I just like trying new things, and you just
Mm.
don't know where it'll lead.
Do you think you've got a better sense of that now, though? Do you think that now that you're in your 30s and you've done that through through your 20s of like, I'm going to say yes to this, and you think you've got more of a sense now of like, I know how that's going to go. I don't really want to do that, but this one looks really interesting, and
Maybe actually, yeah, maybe I am a bit more selective. One thing actually, another thing I was going to mention is about pigeonholing.
Mhm.
I think for me, being told, oh, you can only do this, in a role. So basically, coming out of my internship, I ended up getting an archive researcher role.
Mhm.
And I didn't know at the time that archive researching is very niche.
Mhm.
So basically, archive researching is where you're finding clips and, old footage for documentary kind of stuff. So I got that, and then I got another archive researcher job, and then I got another archive researcher job. And so obviously I was building up credits as an archive researcher, but that's not really what I wanted to do, because
Where you want it to be,
I wanted
yeah.
to be with people, I wanted to go out on location, I wanted to chat to people. I didn't, for some people, searching on YouTube and finding the videos, and there are interesting aspects to it, of course. But then because I had these credits, I just found myself, people going, oh, do you want this archive researcher job? Do you want this archive
Yeah.
researcher job? Do you want this? And I'm like, no more. So actually, during lockdown, weirdly, I had quite a stressful job, archive research job, and I was like, I'm going to say no.
Mhm.
I need to put a stop to it and try and figure out how I can get back into casting, or get
Mhm.
back into kind of location stuff, which is a bit balmy because obviously it was during lockdown where, no productions were being made, and
Yeah.
an internal dialogue of, am I crazy? Am I being stupid?
No, I think it's a brave thing to do. Like there's a difference with, knowing what you don't want to do, I think is just as important or if not more important than knowing
Yeah,
what you want. Because I think there's quite a wide remit of things that we like doing and things that we'll put up with. And
yeah,
definitely as you get into your 30s, you kind of know what that is a lot more
yeah,
because you've been sort of doing whatever in your 20s.
yeah,
So yeah, I think that's an important step of like, yeah, it can be a risk, but is it though? Is it more of a risk to go and do something that you don't really want to do
yeah,
and stick yourself somewhere where you don't want to be? I mean, in the long term, that's more of a risk surely than just saying no to it. I know like the immediate thing is like, well, I'll have money, I'll have the role, I'll have other
yeah,
opportunities, but I think that's the right decision.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a casting researcher role,
Exactly. Yeah, it worked out.
so whew. But
You do know what you're doing.
well, should tell myself that more. But it is that thing of people would just go look at my CV and go, "That's all you can do."
Mm,
That, like, you are an archive researcher, and I'm like, no, I'm more than that. I've got these other skills, and I
mm,
don't like being. I think when people tell me I can't do something, I then go and try and prove them wrong
yeah.
in some kind of way. I think for me, my problem is I love doing different things and trying different things. And, I do my music, I do the TV. I want to kind of go into more presenting type stuff. I also, want to do like youth work. And so for me, there's all these different elements, but I'm just like, how do I bring them together? Or,
Mm,
should I just be focusing on one thing and, you know, do all the other elements on the side? So I still don't really know, Simon.
Yeah, but I don't really know.
I don't really know.
I don't think it matters at this point. I think, you know, like I say, you know what you don't want to do, and you're kind of, you know, you're now in this space of building up this experience.
Yeah,
And I think through this, you know, it'll come to you, kind
yeah.
of thing. I mean,
Well,
I like with this, I did you know, the idea of this was 2017, something like that.
mm,
So and it took me this long just to get this far with
mm.
it. Not very far at all at the moment,
But
but
it
you know,
is because
yeah, because
you're
you've
doing
done
it.
it. Yeah,
That's
you've got to that state. But it was kind of, oh well, I could go down a podcast route, and it's like, well, everybody in the world's got a
mm,
podcast. Like, what are you going to do? What's going to be different? And it was like work, and like sort of talking about work and I don't like work, but I find it interesting.
yeah.
And I've, you know, like I've got the different jobs that I've done,
Mm,
and I think I've got from that experience, I think that's given me quite a good perspective of work as a subject.
yeah.
So you know, and I think you'll, you know, if you get to that point where you're like, right, I'm going to make my documentary now, all of this experience will be
Mm,
stuff that will play into it of like,
yeah.
these are the ideas that you want to use, and this is the experience that you want to use, and so on.
Funnily enough, I'd love to do a documentary where I go and try different jobs
Mm,
and just, you know, and especially like really random jobs that you don't even know that's a thing.
mm.
Because I think that again, when you're younger, it's kind of you don't really understand the
Amount of jobs.
scope of
Yeah,
jobs there are.
yeah.
You know, it's just I want to be a scientist. I want to be a, you know,
You want to be
astronaut.
whatever you see or
Yeah,
experience, don't you, really? And if you don't see or experience, you know, like how many shows do you get about working in a food factory on TV? But, you know,
yeah,
there's people who still work in food manufacturing in the UK. It's a good job for a lot of people.
yeah,
This is spiel that I heard from one of the sector skills people on food manufacture, but it's true, you know. And with engineering, you know, you get a lot of people sort of had kind of negative attitudes towards the new apprenticeships and stuff. And there's pros and cons to it,
mm,
but they were saying that they found with a lot of teachers, they were just kind of pushing apprenticeships with the, you know, the students that they were like, they're the underperforming student. You know, there was like a kind of class bias to it of like, you're a bit rubbish, you're going to work in a petrol station and you're going to do this. But those apprenticeships that they were kind of like, you should do an apprenticeship, some of them would be like for, you know, for example, Rolls Royce or something where you're working with like high, you know, really sort
mm,
of high end engineering and stuff. And some of them are rubbish, some of the apprenticeships are rubbish, but some of them can be really great.
mm,
Uh, but I think as well, why I want to do this is to show some of the breadth of jobs.
yeah,
Not everybody works just in an office or a factory or a supermarket. You know, there's whatever is happening in the world, somebody is working on that in
yeah,
some way.
yeah. Like, you know, uh, there's like a biscuit dunker that you put
Yeah,
into your tea, and it's like, who came up with that? Who actually designed that? And then the packaging around it. Because oh yeah, that I also worked at a graphic design company where they did packaging for supermarkets,
mm,
and it was just again amazing of all the different elements that go into, you know, you pick up a takeaway thing and it's just automatic, you put it in your trolley, but the amount of time that's gone into that packaging, the colors that they've used, the font that they've used, someone's designed that, and just yeah, there's just so many kind of elements to it. And it is interesting in terms of jobs, in terms of perception, because when I did the Asda customer complaints job, telling people that I often felt a certain people's perception of that job, like a call center job,
yeah,
kind of interesting compared to, like I said, when I say I work in TV, people are like, oh, and start asking me loads of questions about it. And, oh, do you work on the screen or behind the screen? Or whereas with that kind of job, people are just a bit like, oh, there's, and obviously, it's not our, it's very different, but there is that slight perception of it not being a great,
Yeah, it's like,
it's like, I don't know, or why would you want to do that kind of thing. But for
yeah,
some people, like I said, some people love it and that's what they
yeah,
want to do. And you shouldn't discourage someone if that's what makes them happy, is if that gives them money, for their table, for their mom, not for their table.
I
If
know what
that
you
gives
mean.
them money,
That puts
they're
food on the table, money in their pockets.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they're satisfied with that, then who is to question whether that's a good job or not?
Mm.
It's a good job for them, and if that makes them happy.
But
And I think,
that's the sort of, it depends what your criteria is, and for a lot of people it's just like, I need money to pay the bills. I don't, you know, so long as I'm not treated appallingly, I get a decent
yeah,
amount of remuneration, I'm happy. I'm just going to go in, I'm going to do it, I'm going to come home and I live my life at home.
yeah,
The job's not that much of a part of it. And I think as well, when you do have, you do have family, you do have kids, you have things going on outside, it makes it a lot easier. I don't know if it was the same for you, but when I first started work, and you're sort of going out a lot and stuff, and it's just nice to have the money in your pocket, and you don't really care that much about what you're doing, so long as you've got money to go out and go on holiday. But then after a while, it becomes like, well, I'm spending most of my time in this place. It needs to have a bit more of something going on for me,
yeah.
is what's going to happen.
And
Go on.
like, even I'd say, like, you have to have a house by a certain time. You've got to be married with kids by a certain time. That all contributes, I think, to people's kind of perceptions of jobs and where they should be, I think.
But it's the kind of by osmosis, though, isn't it? It's like you kind of, it's like that thing of everybody knows what normal is, but nobody thinks they're it. So it's
Yeah.
like, you know, like we see these representations of things of like, this is a person of this age, they have this thing, whether they're single or not, from whatever entertainment, whether it's a soap opera or a film or whatever, there are characters that conform to certain social norms within them that you then pick up on, saying like, oh well, like they're approaching 30, you're just coming to 30, like the end of your 20s. I think, I don't know if it was the same for you, but for me was like, oh, I should be doing a thing, and there should be more of it. I should be somewhere else at this point, and more of my life should be like this, and I don't know what I'm doing. And much more of a crisis about turning 30 than actually being 30. And then being 30 is like, do you know what? This is actually great because I'm not that worried anymore about stuff, and I actually feel a lot more relaxed. So yeah, I don't think there's any rules, like you say, in terms of doing all these different jobs. You're gathering life experience that's
Mm,
gonna come in useful, like whether it's for your research job now or for other
mm.
programs later down the line. It's like you have insight from those life experiences,
Oh,
and a lot of that's not counted. Like everything's so CV obsessed
yeah,
that it's like,
yeah,
if I can't put it on this random bit of paper, then it's not important. It's like, it is. It just maybe not yet.
yeah. I think yeah, I think that's what my worry previously has been, is that someone looks at my CV and goes, "Huh?" like, what are you? What do you want to do? Or would I look as if I'm not committed to anything? And it's not that I'm not committed to that job. When I have a job, I would say, I put my all into it. I'm very hardworking. I really, you know,
Take pride in your work.
yeah, definitely. But I'm very much like, if it doesn't feel right to me, or doesn't feel like it's what I want to do, I'm not going to stay in that job and continue to do it, because it'll just, it'll make me unhappy. Whereas, I don't know, there's that idea of having the one stable job, you know, is seen as something you should have, really. Whereas actually kids should be told that you can change your mind. You might not know what you want to do, and actually that's fine. Not knowing what you want to do is not a bad thing. Try and you know, explore what you want to do and try different jobs, you know, if you can. And I think that having those people who champion you is actually really important in youth and your early career, where people can see something in you that you might not be able to see. And having that, I think, is really important for kids now, I think. You know, I remember my flatmates were laughing at me for this, but I remember in year 7, and my drama teacher asked me to be in this play with year 11s, and I was like, oh, like debating with myself, oh, can I do it? It's with year 11s, are so old, and oh God, like having this, you know, worrying about it. And to be honest, all I did for the play was lie in a coma. but the whole play, so it wasn't like I was, you know, doing anything, you know, really, you know, out there. But at that time, I just remember feeling like it was such a big thing, and him taking a chance, you know, asking me to do it, you know, not other people, because he thought, you know, I'd be good at, you know, playing dead maybe.
You don't move much. You'd be great in this role.
You'd be great in a coma. But yeah, and then, you know, I remember my English teacher as well, kind of, yeah, she just always encouraged me. But then you have the other side where I had 2 French teachers. One was good, one not so good. And I remember the not so good French teacher saying to me, the highest you'll ever get is a B. You won't get any higher than that. And literally, and always made me feel like I was the worst at French, you know, that out in the group. And guess what I did? I got an A and was like, ha ha ha, I have proved you wrong. But those limiting factors can, you know, by someone saying to someone, you can't achieve that, you can't do that.
Well, sometimes it's like a dare, isn't it?
I don't think she was, though. I think she actually did think that
No, yeah.
I wouldn't be able to achieve it. But yeah, and for some people, they might just take that as fact, you know, for kids, and go, okay, I can't do it. I won't bother
no
then.
point then, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely we need more champions of exploration.
Yeah, and I think, well, again, this is part of the reason that I'm doing this, is like that whole, I mean, even something like LinkedIn, it's all designed around this perception of, you know, like continual non-stop success, performance, productivity. It's like, it's an aesthetic for robots. Do you know what I mean? It's like robots can work at high productive rate constantly, flat out, for as long as you've got the power to run them and the materials to put in. People don't. Like all natural systems sort of ebb and flow, like our moods ebb and flow, our productivity ebbs and flows. And you can't always be on. And like you say, like making mistakes is a large part of learning. If you don't have the opportunity in your life to go out and make mistakes, and get things wrong and learn from them, then, you know, there's no freedom there. Then you just you know, it's like you must always win and always be perfect and always be performing and always be productive. And then if you don't, you sort of scrap heaps. But nobody can live up to that, because that's not how people work. So you're just gonna, you know, you drive yourself crazy.
Well, I think that's why in TV, so there's a TV and film charity, and there's higher rates of mental health issues in TV. And I think it's for that very reason, where you're constantly having to be on your game and, you know, not fail. And there's this pressure to, you know, work obscene hours and, you know, do what, you know, the mean boss tells you to do, because, you know, you can't be seen as not being able to do it, or
non-compliant. Maybe.
yeah. Or sometimes if you make a mistake, you know, obviously if you don't press record on a camera, you don't press record on a camera, and there's some mistakes which are going to be bigger than others, whereas actually there needs to be more room for, I don't know, just a bit more
For imperfection, maybe. Yeah.
Lenient with things, or checking in with people, because, you know, you don't know what's going on in people's lives that are then impacting their jobs. You could be in the same job and be really happy if everything's stable around you, or you could be in the same job and some other things are not stable around you, so then it impacts your job. So it's kind of, I suppose, just having a bit more, just I think kindness maybe, to just, you know, people, everyone has flaws.
Just a little bit more
Everyone
consideration that other people are people. Everyone has what?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Flaws.
Yeah.
You know, you can't swim through life and expect nothing to go wrong, because unless you're Superman, you know, I don't think that would ever happen, really. But there is that weird perception that you should go through life and everything being hunky-dory, and kind of on point. I saw I can't remember where I read it, but there was this interesting article where it showed, I suppose, 2 generations back, you know, to have a roof over your a roof over your head, and just generally having food on your plate. That, you know, that's what people were driven for, and, you know, looking after their families. And then obviously their children were like, well, my dad, you know, my parents gave me a roof over my head and food on my plate. I want to do one better than that, and I want to go on holidays more, or, you know, have a bigger house and more food. So their idea of success kind of is a bit higher. And then the next generation's like, well, you know, I want an even bigger house and more food and more holidays and all this other stuff, all this other kind of materialistic stuff. And then I think that's kind of what's happened, that actually our perception now of what is success or what is satisfaction is actually beyond what is achievable. And I've read quite, you know, been listening to a lot of podcasts and reading kind of during lockdown. And there's this idea of like, when you do have, like, I want a fancy car, you know, I want to drive a Lamborghini. That's, you know, that's my ambition in life. And then you get the Lamborghini and you're like, oh, okay, what's next? There's that what next element to it. And actually the satisfaction of having the Lamborghini wasn't all that it was made up to be. So actually, when you think about people going, you know, I want to be at this point in my career at this age, in some ways you're setting yourself up for failure in some ways, or you're setting yourself up to be maybe disappointed. I don't know, like.
Well, I suppose the other way as well is like, if you've got your checklist, once you get to the end of the checklist, then what?
Yeah.
Like, where's your new one coming from?
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas actually, I think what I'm trying to teach myself now is being in the moment a lot more. And, you know, it's more about the people around me and the experience, more about the experiences I have during my career. Yeah, the experiences I have, and maybe how I can use my meanderings through life
Mm-hmm.
to, help other people discover their own meandering.
A wandering we shall go. Well, Leeds, if you liked that little winding journey, then it would be great for me to hear about your own journey. Next time on Working Hours, we're staying in the world of TV, but in a different area, both functionally and geographically. On the next show, I will be chatting to someone who's moved to Leeds to work as a video editor at Channel 4, so do come back for that one. Also, go listen to last year's volume, hear me shout more nonsense on episode 4, or listen to some of the other episodes there with all the great smart people that I got to chat to last year. There were only 10 episodes published for 2020, so it won't take you long to get up to speed with the archive. Before I sign off, I just wanted to touch on some podcast admin to let anyone who might care where I am with certain things. Time codes are coming, transcripts are coming, and YouTube versions are coming. I cannot give you a date for any of these as yet. If anyone is listening to this part, I would really love for you to do the old like, share and subscribe thing. And if you're feeling it, why not become one of my first 3 patrons and become one of my favourite people ever? People rarely want to be the first at a thing, but as soon as you get 3 people doing it, then you've potentially started a movement. Email this podcast, workinghoursepod@western-studios.com, with questions, comments, queries, memos, manifestos, maybe not those last 2. Right, time for the rules. This is a rules-based local podcast for local people after all. The first rule of Working Hours is you must tell a loiner about working hours. The second rule of Working Hours is you must like and subscribe to the show. The third rule of Working Hours is that if you're a loiner, then be my guest, Leeds. The fourth rule of Working Hours is take ownership of your work, agitate, educate, organise and get to democratising your workplace. That's it from me. What do you do, Leeds? Tell me about it. Go to western-studios.com for more information, or just email workinghourspod@western-studios.com with a brief bio and some suggestions regarding your availability. Please let me know if you would wish to be anonymous on the show. If you would like to take part but you don't want to be identified, then you can send me a secure email to westernstudios@protonmail.com. Don't want your interview published right away? Fine, we can do that. You will have approval on what gets published from your interview. You can follow this show on Twitter @westernstudios2 and on Instagram @western_studios_leads. You can support the show with a one-off donation either to Ko-fi, that's ko-fi.com/working hours, or via buymeacoffee.com/Western Studios, where you can give as much or as little as you like. If you'd really like to help out, then you can give the show regular support and help build the project and help us in meeting the goal of lasting out this decade. Subscriptions for loiners are £1 a month. Go to www.patreon, that's patreon.com/workinghourspod to become a regular supporter. If you're not from Leeds and you would still like to support this show, you can join the Outlander level for £5 a month. That's it, now go do one amazing thing today. Working Hours podcast is made by Western Studios Leeds Limited. It is presented and produced by Simon Treen. This interview was recorded over Skype. Thank you to Captivate.fm for podcast hosting. The Working Hours theme was provided by Australian-based loiner DJ Punk. You can hear more from Punk at soundcloud.com/bigtimepunk. If you're in Leeds and have a podcast idea that you would like to develop, please email makemypodcast@western-studios.com with some details about what you would like to achieve, and let's start making your podcast a reality today. Follow Western Studios on Twitter, Instagram, and linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios for sporadic news on new episodes of Working Hours and for new original podcast productions that will be coming soon from Western Studios Leeds.